Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you live a better life right now. And now your host, Marco Salinas.
And welcome back to another episode of Business Innovators Radio. I'm your host, Marco Salinas, and we are back again for part two of a two-part interview. And depending on how things go today, actually, it might be a three-part interview series. But I've got one of my good buddies and one of my favorite people to interview, Mr. Mike Jarman, on the show with us today. And Mike, just for a quick reiteration here, Mike is the co-founder and CEO of TurboPass USA. TurboPass is a Fintech software as a service company based out of Austin and San Antonio, Texas. And so we are going to be diving in a lot deeper today with Mike on TurboPass and a little bit more of the nitty-gritty, a little bit more of the details of what his company does and what his team does. And we hope to provide a really cool, informative podcast here about this company and all the really cool, fascinating, innovative things that they are doing. So, Mike, welcome back to Business Innovators Radio for the second time, my friend.
Thank you, Marco. Love being with you. Looking forward to chatting.
We always have a good time. We always have great conversation anytime that I talk with you. And I really enjoy interviewing you because I have just a natural fascination with what you guys are doing, because it's just kind of not your everyday run of the mill thing. You guys are in a niche category. You guys are serving a niche category as well. And I love the way that everything kind of came about and how you guys were able to build this thing, and it's really gotten some legs as well on it, and it's starting to take off. So I am excited to pull this information out today and just kind of expand on some of these things that you guys are doing and go down into the weeds a little bit. But again, the weeds can still be very exciting, and it can be very informative as well. Now, before I do that, Mike, I mentioned to you that I had a icebreaker question that I wanted to start with, and this is a little bit more on the personal side of things. But the reason why I wanted to ask you is because you and I have something in common. I had a conversation with your brother a while back, and he walked into my office. At the time, we were kind of sharing some space there, and he walked into my office and he saw something that was on my computer screen. And as soon as I tell you what it is, you're probably going to light up a little bit here, because for us, this is really important. We kind of nerd out on this, all right? But he walked in, and I had a big giant picture of a drum set up on the screen, okay? But it wasn't just any old drum set. It was a drum set for a guy named Neil Peart.
Absolutely.
Neil Peart for those that don't know, is the drummer of a very well-known rock band, Rush, Canadian rock band Rush, right?
Rest in peace.
Amen.
Yeah.
Rest in peace to the legend, the professor himself, right?
Exactly.
And so I found out that you were at least a fairly good-sized Rush fan, and
Big
that
Rush
always
fan.
that always excites me, because there are a lot of Rush fans out there, but at the same time, you don't typically just bump into them left and right. At least that's been my experience. So I just wanted to make sure that you were aware that we share that in common. I discovered Rush when I was a kid, because I've got two older brothers, and one of my oldest brother, Tony, was a guitar player of a rock band, and he's the one that introduced me to that at a super young age. I started obsessing over it. The drum set went all the way around Neil Peart. And of course it was like, what on earth is this? Like, if it's just unbelievable. So can you tell me, for those that are listening, have you been, I'm certain you've been to some of their concerts.
Oh,
the
yeah.
better question is how many concerts, and what was your first encounter with them, or what was your first concert?
Well, it actually was my first rock concert ever. In 1982, I believe I was in 7th or 8th grade. And it was them supporting the Signals album, I think. So after Moving Pictures, and then I somehow talked my parents into letting me go, and they were playing at the Summit in Houston, which was the Rockets arena.
Yeah.
Amazing band, amazing show. And yeah, I drove my parents nuts every morning. I would pull out either the moving pictures, signals, 2112 album, and I just put it on and crank it before we'd go. I'd have to go to school. I wasn't a great student, but Rush was my first concert. Introduced my wife to them and took her along. Sort of reluctantly. You don't see tons of women at Rush concerts, as you know,
Sure.
but she says she likes going because for the only time she can ever go to an arena or a sports show where there's no line in the ladies' room and the men's room has a big line. So, in the last time
Great
we saw
point.
them, was supporting the R20. I'm sorry, the R40 tour, which was,
Yeah.
I guess, their final tour,
Right.
and saw them at the F1 Formula One track amphitheater here.
Awesome.
But yeah, man, they were the best, and still listen to them every week. Somehow I managed to work out to some of their music, and have their documentary, Beyond the Lighted Stage, I think is called.
Yeah.
I have that recorded. It's like I've watched it like 5 times. So if I'm ever bored, I just turn that on.
Absolutely.
But
Well,
you're
I'm
either
honored to
old or you're multi-generational fan of Rush. Like your parents or your grandparents now have
right.
introduced you to Rush. So
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, I'm really stoked and honored to share that and have that in common with you because again, I don't see that as often as I wish that I would,
heck
especially
yeah,
these days, right? And so for me, my first concert was Counterparts in the
oh
early
yeah,
90s. So and I was a kid, man. I was like I think I was about 11 years old, something like that. But again, once I saw that drum set going all the way around and the backside of it was electronic and the front side was acoustic, I was sold, man. I'm like, I really don't
amazing.
need anything else. Yeah.
Yeah, and
And
he wrote all
so,
the lyrics too.
and he wrote the lyrics, man. The guy was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant. So, yeah, definitely a sad day when we lost him. A total shocker for me. I had no idea, but the music lives on, and that's the good thing. And just like yourself, I have it in my rotation absolutely every single week in some capacity. So, and I
For
think
sure.
it will probably be that way until the day that I am unable to request music on my own. So,
It's just so much rocket sauce they had.
absolutely, absolutely. So, I think that was a fun conversation starter,
Yeah,
Mike. What do
man,
you think?
love it. Yeah,
Now
I'd love
let's.
love to see your drum set. I never took up the drums. I just felt like I would never measure up. So
I hear you, man.
can't
No,
wait to
and,
see
and
it.
I never came close to anything even remotely close to Neil. But the drum set that I've got is basically just a very small, basic one. So
Sure.
and I cannot play even remotely close to his level, but you know what? I still enjoy it. It's still fun.
Learn. Absolutely.
So there you go. Well, Mike, let's dive in for the real reason for this phone call, or I'm sorry, this podcast and this interview in this occasion, which is to talk more about TurboPass. And the first interview, you and I went deep into your background. We learned about you, where you had been, the fact that you had worked with your dad and a couple of business ventures that he had, which were absolutely inspirational in terms of why you and your brother are where you guys are today, playing a very big role in even though it took decades, it was just very much part of the equation once we started talking about your story and where you came from. There's no question about it. So that was really cool. You covered a little bit about some of the places that you worked and your early years with Santander and Capital One Auto Finance and these kind of things, which again were all a big part of your journey and where you are today. So, but today I really want this interview to be focused a little bit more about what you guys are really doing there with TurboPass and the impact that you guys are making in that field, in that market. So let's start with this, Mike. Let's just start with the basics. This might be a little bit of a reiteration of what we've already covered, but that's okay. But tell me what inspired the creation of TurboPass and ultimately what problem were you guys trying to solve when you started this business?
Sure. Well, I guess having been in the auto finance business for so long, kind of facing a another kind of merger experience that I was going to go through with the last bank that I was with. Yeah, and my brother was just leaving his his partnership in a dealership there in San Antonio. We kind of put our heads together and had a few moments of inspiration. And I had read an article that made a big impact on me in Wired magazine. It was, I think, a cover story. It was called "The End of Coding." And because I'm not a coder, I'm not a software programmer or anything like that, I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. So as you read the article, it talks about how there are much more inexpensive and accessible tools now for people that are familiar with certain industries or certain problems that software could potentially solve for, right? And these are things like AWS is Amazon's, kind of web service, where they have, kind of just very big and inexpensive sandboxes and tools, off the shelf software that you could buy. And if you, which is what we did, we kind of contracted with a programmer and an architect. We sort of sketched out these problems in the car business. And the way that I describe it is, it's a 3-party problem. And the problems are obviously threefold between the buyer, the seller, and the finance company or bank, right? So they started using this line of mine in some of our welcome emails this past week. Patrick was asking me for this, but basically it's a trust problem. So buyers don't trust sellers, sellers don't trust buyers, and lenders don't trust anybody. So we have this lack of trust across three, areas, 3 axis points. And one of the things that I might have mentioned in our first chat was an experience I went through doing a refinance of our house back in, I think, 2015. It was right around the same time that I was getting inspired to maybe leave the corporate world. And they asked me to link up my banking information, my Wells Fargo, I guess, to check and see if I had if I had a job, like my direct deposit was coming through, and if I had enough money down, or that they have an asset requirement. So that happened, and Rocket Mortgage had just done those ads, right? Push button, get mortgage. And so there are these processes that are becoming, in the mortgage industry, a little bit more digital. And what Rocket managed to do first in the mortgage industry was bring a lot of the processes that happen on the back end of a mortgage over to the front end, where customers are either pre-qualified or they are truly approved, not just pre-authorized or pre-selected or something, that they are actually pre-approved because some of this validation information has been gathered directly from the source. And so when I saw that experience on my mobile, on my iPhone, I said, we've got to do this. We got to try to figure something out for automotive. And I just happened to run into some people. There was an executive that was co-working in my co-working office down in South Austin, where I spent some time as I was transitioning and leaving the corporate world. I met her, and she was actually involved in the pilot for Rocket Mortgage with a startup out of Georgia, and she was their COO, but was based in Austin, commuting to Atlanta a few times a month. But, we kind of borrowed some of their data stream from them.
Sure.
We actually offered to try to build an automotive version of their product, which was kind of the engine underneath the Rocket Mortgage experience. And so they were just too busy with onboarding all these new customers in mortgage, because Fannie Mae had approved them to be this sort of asset validation tool for the mortgage industry. And so we got lucky, I guess. They allowed us to buy some of their data, and we built our own kind of consumer journey with the help of a software architect and an engineer. And it took us, I don't know, maybe 6 months to have like an MVP, this minimum viable product that we put in the hands of car dealers, and then we showed our report. Once the dealer does what he's supposed to do, they our platform produces a report that could be 7 to 20 pages that has a lot of very detailed information regarding income, employment, identity. And so the dealers immediately saw this and got some value from it, particularly around down payments, because Saturday night, customers' credit maybe is not perfect. They want to write a deposit check for $3,000, and the dealer's not really sure if they're going to let the car leave. So with this tool, we had a big Toyota store in town that helped us test the product, and a couple of independents. We had an independent up in Boston that started using it a lot, like 10 times a day. He was using our reports, and then our reports, the lenders we talked to and trained their staff to view the result of our reports. They loved it. One of the surprises we got was that because our report is standardized, we take information that might have come in, say, from 3 months bank statements from Chase, or 3 months bank statements from your credit union. Dealers all the time would fax that paperwork over to the lenders, and every experience of looking through 40 pages of fax paper was brutal, right, for these funders. Sure. And so as soon as they saw a report that was aggregating information, it was adding up all the deposits, what type of deposits they were, their cash flow analysis, very quickly they could process a deal in 2 minutes. And then they got another report, looks exactly the same. They just go to these spots, and the funders suddenly were funding deals faster. The dealers were getting paid faster, which is a huge problem in the car business. They call it contracts in transit, or CIT, right? So if a Ford store sells 80 cars over the weekend, all those cars leave the inventory, but the dealer has to pay off the inventory line of credit. So they might have $1 million that they have to clean up out of their line of credit, but they haven't gotten the money from Ford or Capital One, right, or Ally. They're the funding, the banks that are financing all these 80 cars.
Sure.
And so there's this 2, 3, 4, 5 business day extended time where dealers have a cash flow issue. So we're solving this dealer CIT problem. We're also allowing the consumer to be kind of a part of their approval process, and instead of being sent home to go get pay stubs or go to put them on a dealer computer and tell them to log into wellsfargo.com from the dealership computer, that's kind of sketchy, right? So that ended some of that practice, and they would just say, I'm sending you a text, just link that up and we'll have this report in 2 minutes, and I'm going to get you the best rates based on your income and your employment. There's a combination of things that go into getting the best rates on a car loan, right?
Sure.
So dealers are now using the tool. The TurboPass tool has been kind of graduated to several thousand dealers now are using it, not just to verify information from a credit application, but really like our dealer in Boston, who was advertising to a lot of the Brazilian immigrant population up there. And so what would happen is they would get a lot of these shoppers that were Brazilian nationals, need a car to work, but they don't have a social, but they do have a bank account. They have a
Sure.
Chime account, or they're running their small business through PayPal, right?
Right.
And so now they immediately have this tool that in 2 minutes this dealer is using it up front. Like, we understand our customer much better, and we now are going to establish whether you can buy or not. Because
Right.
that's the other thing. The dealer doesn't want to waste time if you can't qualify to buy something. And there's
That's
lots
right.
of lenders, like our number one lender partner in the subprime credit space is Westlake Financial, one of the biggest in the country. They were one of the earliest adopters about, because they do deals. If you don't have a social, they call it like a ITIN, right, or a tax ID number.
Yep.
They finance folks that have that. So if they have income, that's really the basis of why they would qualify. And in the past, they had all kinds of problems with paper and faxes, and there's quite a bit of fraud. Whether the fraud comes from the consumer, which happens a lot. There's fake bankstatements.com. You could go to a website and get a fake pay stub for $5. And so this has proliferated into like an $8 billion a year problem in auto for fraud, right?
Gosh.
So we're part of reducing that fraud, that friction, and speeding up the process for real car buyers. And so it
Sure.
solves a very, very real problem for the consumer, the seller, and the lender.
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, you mentioned at the beginning of your explanation that you kind of sort of took the idea from a different industry and sort of repurposed it into something that was tailored to the auto dealer world. Now, so that implies obviously you guys are not the only, you know, data verification type of provider or service that's out there. At the same time, you guys are doing things that are perhaps unique to you, to TurboPass.
Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about what sets you guys apart from other verification data providers, either in your own market, or if you guys are the only ones really in the auto market, maybe just kind of across the board?
Well, so we're not the only solution available to lenders. Lenders use all kinds of database information to try to validate employment, income, identity. However, we from the beginning we decided, even though you know trying to obtain a patent on our process or on our software wasn't going to necessarily make us more valuable or sign up more customers for us, but we wanted to set apart what we did that was unique. And so what we do on behalf of, again, the buyer, and then the seller is that first creditor. And so we start with that first relationship between the seller and the buyer. Many other solution providers wait to try to do these things again on the back end or on the funding side of the business. We think because the dealer has a stake in making sure that what he's presenting to the bank is the truth, that he has to stand behind that loan for 60 months if he has to, presenting that this information that the customer provided to me is true and correct. Otherwise, the dealer has to buy it back. Okay,
Okay.
so what we did was we created a tokenized report, a system that allows the creditor, the originator of the loan, or we call them retail installment contracts. That report carries a TurboPass code, and in order to be trusted, right, because it's just a PDF that a human can read, each report carries a code with it. And so the dealer can then pass along the code to their lending partners, and the lenders have access to our platform. They decode the code, and they bring down the same report that has the same
Okay.
exact data, and now it's trusted, and they can make this promise to the dealer. Now I'm going to fund you faster. I might even give you better terms, not necessarily for the consumer, but the dealer can maybe get better fees, because most of these lenders charge fees to buy the paper. They discount the paper. It's sort of the way that the industry has traditionally managed risk, right? So if I want to buy a little bit lower FICO credit, I might, on a $10,000 face value loan, I might only advance $9,000. Okay, so that's $1,000 fee or discount of the paper, and some lenders are actually lowering the fees if a TurboPass report is included.
I see.
But we did, after about 2.5, 3 years of back and forth with our patent attorneys and the patent office, we did receive a patent on our software process, and I think it's framed up in my at my office in Austin.
Yes.
But yeah, that was kind of a cool moment that we were a little bit surprised that they issued the patent, but it's unique.
Big time. Yep.
And so we have the tokenized report of trusted source data that's also consumer permission. So the customer's in the loop when they're sharing this information to help themselves, right? To get better rates, to get a car, to qualify.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I was really looking for was, I think obviously every business needs to kind of have some element of differentiation, right? And you guys are no exception to that. And your patent really kind of lays all that out. It's making it crystal clear what it is that's unique about your product, and you even kind of got the official stamp of approval, so to speak, to back it up. And so I think that's definitely a big deal. I think that's most certainly worth talking about and bragging about a little bit, if you will.
We do when we can, and it may be worth something someday, right?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. I'm curious, Mike, though, talk to me about the data sources that TurboPass taps into to verify that information, for these potential auto buyers.
Sure.
And a secondary follow up to that, which you can kind of roll on all into one, is how do you maintain the data privacy and the compliance, with all the regulators? I know there's probably heavy regulation that's involved in that
Absolutely.
space. So maybe you can kind of touch on both of those things.
Sure. What we do is we use a variety of data aggregators, is what they're called. They work across. They sort of work behind the scenes. I believe it all started in the financial services industry. So, if you had an Edward Jones account or you had a Schwab account, there were companies, kind of fintechs, early fintechs at the time, 15 years ago or so, that would push and pull banking data from directly from the sources, based on the owner of the data, which is the customer, right? If you have a Schwab account, you own your Schwab data information. But if you want to pull in your Schwab data, let's say to a E-Trade account, you want to do some financial trading, or you want to connect things, let's say, to QuickBooks, right? So all of that, all those companies that in the past are the kind of the connective tissue of financial data that goes across sort of behind the scenes. So what we've done is we ask the customer to have a sort of a short window of time to allow for his financial data to be shared for a limited window of time. We don't store financial data. We basically create our report and we tokenize it, and then the data aggregators behind the scenes go out And this is all throughout the process. The consumer is really managing it from the beginning, right? If us or Rocket Mortgage or whoever is asking a customer, hey, do you want to share with Rocket Mortgage your checking account, your savings account, your small business account? You go yes, 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 or no, no. Like there's some very specific disclosure information in there, and they finish the process on their mobile device, and so then the data aggregator has permission to go out and pull that information in. It gets pushed to our software, machine essentially that builds our report, and then we do have a data file that if we have a deep enough relationship, like again, like the QuickBooks relationship with your bank account. If a lender wants to receive our data or the consumer's data through a data file, we have the ability to push that over to them. Again,
Okay.
for the specific use of approving or verifying, validating what the consumer is stating on a credit application. So we have gone through several iterations, and we use different data aggregators for banking information. We have multiple that provide that, because sometimes some aggregators have coverage over, say, 12,000 financial institutions, but then another aggregator has 15,000, and there's like 2 or 3,000 there that one supports, but the other one doesn't. And then we also have a relatively new product that is a income and employment verification that allows a consumer to connect their payroll information. So if your employer uses ADP
Right.
as your payroll provider, if you know your ADP and login information, you can then share that, and we get the data from ADP through that aggregator, and we build a pay stub report. And
Okay.
so when when a lender sees a TurboPass pay stub report, they're like, wow, this is direct from the store, direct from the source, and the consumer has approved the sharing of it, right? Again, because the status quo right now, like our competition, is literally paper pay stubs and faxes and
Right.
copies of copies, or a picture. Literally, a salesperson at a dealership takes a picture of a pay stub and emails it to himself, right, to his Gmail.
Right.
Then he emails it to the finance guy, the Toyota finance director, who then emails it to Ally. And so right now, in today's world, those deals get approved, and sometimes they come back and say, oh, wait a minute, or they have to repo the car in 6 months, and they realize, oh my God, that paper pay stub that we accepted was fraud, right, or something.
Sure.
And who knows where it came from, but all that causes more pain, because now the bank comes back to the dealership and says, hey, you need to write me a check because we lost $14,000 at the auction on the repo. And there's nothing the dealer can do. So the large publicly traded auto retailers, to name a few, like AutoNation, Penske, Lithia, these big boys,
Yep.
they all run very, very legitimate, business processes, but things do sneak through because they haven't had the tools or the sophistication at the point of sale to really call into question the paperwork that some of the folks provide. And so if you own 300 dealerships around the country, every month you're going to probably get a call from Santander that says, hey, we had 17 problem children, and we need a check for $500,000, right? These are
Yeah.
real conversations that happen every day at the highest level. So we have some we do business with most publicly traded auto retail groups, But that doesn't mean that all 300 AutoNation stores are signed up with TurboPass. Not yet. So, but there may be a handful that work with us in Florida, a few that work with us in Texas, and so it's starting to gain more traction. And so the bosses at the corporate offices, we're talking to more and more every day, and adding more pilots. And we just did a deal where we're gonna move forward with not Echo. Yeah, Echo Park is
Oh yeah.
a retailer that's kind of a CarMax experience.
Right,
But
right.
one of the publicly traded companies owns that brand, Echo Park. I think they have 32 around the country, and we just did a pilot with them. They liked what they saw with the 5 stores. They tried it, so I think we're going to expand to the other 25 locations.
Yeah.
And that's just how we're trying to build the business. Is the more dealers that sign up with us, the more lenders see our reports, and the more they ask for them, and it's a symbiotic thing where
Yeah.
everybody's winning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Very cool stuff. Mike, walk us through the typical process for an actual auto dealer that is using TurboPass, that's actually signed on with TurboPass's services. Maybe you can walk us through from what the onboarding process looks like all the way to, let's call it, data integration. And then maybe you can touch on as well what kind of support or training that you guys offer for new clients during the onboarding process. What does that look like? What does that entail?
Well, we get a lot of dealers that just go to our website. They sign up for a subscription package, whether it's a package for 5 reports or 10 reports a month or 50 reports a month, and many times they hear about it through their lender rep, right? So if they're doing business with Westlake or Exeter now and AmeriCredit, they're hearing from their bank reps to sign up with us. And so as soon as they sign up, they are given some video based training opportunities, and then we like to try to reach out to them afterwards in our customer client success group reaches out to try to set up what we call a comprehensive training. And there we walk them through trying to set up more users, setting up maybe an opportunity to hold like a Zoom call with 10 or 20 staff members where we could train all 20 of them. Like everything else, right? The more that your client knows your product, and the more that they understand the problems that it's solving, and the more people we can train at a time, the more success we have with them, and they stay on, now for years with us, continuing to use the tool every day.
Oh, yes.
But we have we try to support the U.S. Retail auto industry from the East Coast to the West Coast, and Saturday support. So we have inbound calls that we answer. We have chat based support for the dealers, but a lot of it is our lessons that we learned from great SaaS companies like HubSpot, which is like Salesforce.com,
Right.
where you could find video modules to learn about how to best use the TurboPass, how to read the TurboPass report, what are the important items on the report, what are the lenders looking for on the report. So we just continually trying to build our video library, and doing it in Spanish as well. We try to work on having versions in Spanish of as much as we can.
Yeah.
A lot of our dealer base in Florida is Latino, and we get lots of business from folks, like I said, that have the ability to work, but they don't have a social. So it's their only way to try to qualify to get a car or a truck is their income, and so they can use TurboPass to do that.
Yeah. Absolutely. You had mentioned earlier, Mike, that you had a couple stories on deck, and I don't know if
Oh,
this would apply.
yeah, I think so. It's pretty good timing. we one of the stories, an early story, we actually built a little marketing campaign with the Auto Finance News. I think it was the Subprime Times. They have a newsletter, and we
Sure.
did a full page kind of ad that was depicting this three-way problem that I was describing earlier. But
Yes.
it actually is based on a real issue that happened. So I'm working late at our co-working space down in South Austin. It's called Orange Co-working, and there's another guy that I'd met, young kid, certainly younger than me, was on the phone, and he was like, "What do you mean I have to bring the car back? Like, well, I bought the car like 3 weeks ago. I can't believe this. What do you mean?" And so he hung up, and I walked over and I said, "Hey," Shane was his name. "Shane, do you mind? I'm sorry but I kind of overheard what you said about the car, and I'm kind of in the car business. What's going on?" And he's like, "Well, I I bought a car in Belton, which is like an hour away from Austin, and I've had the car for a few weeks, and I gave them my bank statements, but now they're saying I have to bring the car back because the bank isn't accepting the and I don't know what to do." And I said, "Okay, look, I'm pretty familiar with this issue. If you don't mind, I'd like to see if I can help. So tell me the name of the dealer." And he told me. I didn't know exactly who it was, but it was a young lady named Jackie. And so I called Jackie on his behalf and said, "Hey, I'm kind of helping Shane with this issue. Who is the lender?" And she says, "Well, it's Westlake Financial." And I said, "Wow, okay. I know this is really weird, but I'm actually working on a pilot with Westlake on a solution that can verify employment and income for especially self-employed people." And
Right.
Shane, I forgot to mention, Shane was a very hardworking IT kind of consultant guy. He would take your laptop and clean it up and store your information. And if you dropped your laptop, he would fix it. Like, he was a hardware and software kind of guru when it came to that. And so I knew he was a super hardworking guy. And so I went back to Shane and I said, "Look, if you don't mind, like, tell me who do you bank with?" He goes, I have a checking account with my credit union, but I run my business through PayPal because everybody wants to pay me like through the mobile, and I have PayPal."
Yeah.
I said, "Okay, cool. I'm going to send you this text. It's a TurboPass software. We're over here working on it. I want you to connect your PayPal account to the thing." So as soon as he did that, it took 2 minutes. We got the report. I happen to know the head of the funding department at Westlake. I told him that. I said, "Look, I'm gonna pull whatever strings I can here."
Yep.
But actually, I don't know if I sent him the text or the dealer. I set the dealer up with a login, and she sent him the text. That's what it was. So we got 90 days of cash flow information from his PayPal account. Now, the dealer had sent his credit union bank statements, and they looked a little weird.
Yep.
And Westlake, doesn't have a sense of humor about these things. So they kicked the deal. They just sent it
Yeah.
back from California back to Belton, and they said, "We're not funding the deal." So
It's kind of black
Jackie,
and white. Yeah.
yeah, Jackie's like, "Okay." Well, she calls the customer, and never mind that it's kind of illegal. Like, once he's in the car and he signed the contract, he has a contract with her. Like, I always knew I could get him. He wasn't going to lose his car over this, right? Whether I made her honor the contract,
Yeah.
because the dealer is the first lender, okay? And they signed a retail installment contract. She's the first lender. Whether she can get her money from Westlake is not Shane's business, right? But he didn't know any better. So I
Sure.
told him, "Look, you're not going to lose your car, but hopefully we can get Jackie her money." So I send the report to George Arenado, I shouldn't name all these people. He's like the head of the funding department at Westlake,
Okay.
and George already was familiar with TurboPass. And he goes, okay, look, I have like a very rough bank statements over here that are from the last 90 days. But I'm looking at this beautiful, clean new TurboPass report, and I can see I'm auditing that the transactions match,
Yeah.
basically.
Right.
So I'm going to go ahead and fund the deal. So Jackie gets her money literally 6 hours later, $7, $8, $9,000 deal.
Yeah.
And she didn't have to, try to repo Shane's car.
No joke.
And so we built a little funny kind of an animated three-way problem ad where I had a
Yeah.
little animation of Shane with a backpack on telling his story. I had a little animation of Jackie telling her story. Like, Mike called me out of the blue and all I had to do was text Shane. And the next thing I knew, I was funded.
Sure.
And George I had him animated in the little ad with his suit on and his briefcase. And he said, as soon as I saw the TurboPass report, we were able to audit the bank statement, and it was only possible because of TurboPass. So that really became like our real world solution, right?
Yeah.
That we solved this real problem for these three parties.
Heck yeah.
Westlake funds 10,000 deals a day, but it got their attention, and hopefully the rest is history. And we've built quite a bit of a good business with a lot of dealers now that have the same problem, right?
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. Really, really, really cool story, Mike. That was, I mean, you sure got your ROI on that co-working space. That's
And
for sure.
Shane had been homeless before. He was living out of his car, and he definitely needed a car. And within like
Yeah.
6 months, he actually got another. He traded in his car that he bought from Jackie. He traded in at a nicer store. He got a better interest rate, so his life improved really over the next 7-8 months. And of
No
course,
joke.
we coached him, how to go back and shop for the next car and the next interest rates and things. I think Santander was his next bank, and we use the same thing, same TurboPass report to prove his income with the other loan. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Shane's a friend of TurboPass, and we appreciated his willingness
Absolutely.
to help us.
And I think from a higher level point of view, Mike, the story also provides the point that, especially in a lot of industries, but I think especially in the automotive world, everything is very numbers driven, right? We've got to do X number of deals within X period of time, and we don't hit those numbers, certain things are going to go down. And you just kind of slowed down and you just shared the story of one person, one individual. What does it look like at the ground level, boots on the ground, so to speak, for one guy, right? And the impact that it made in his life to ensure that that guy was actually able to properly fund that deal because he really needed that car, and it proved to be, in the bigger picture of things, an important stepping stone in his life, right? And so how many more stories are there out there
Right.
when you zoom in, right, on the actual person, and it's not just strictly just this, we've got to reach a certain benchmark so we can hit our bonus. Those things are important, obviously they are, right? But let's not lose sight of what we're doing here. Let's not lose sight of the individuals that we are helping. And this is where it all kind of comes full circle with
That's
everything that
right.
you guys are doing. It's a lot more than just, we're getting into all the nitty gritty, like I mentioned here, with all of this data derivatives and algorithms and, regulation, right? I mean, we can sit there for hours and talk about that, but I'm glad you shared that story, because at the end of the day, really, what is this all about? It's about helping guys like Shane.
Yeah,
This really is.
absolutely. And I'm always hearing from Shane on LinkedIn. He's a big networking guy now. And but yeah, you're right. early on, we just tried to kind of put a microphone in front of people that it solved some problems for. I used to get on. I mean, I did a podcast for a little while. I learned how to do podcasting, but I interviewed a few of my dealers that were using the tool and either recorded them and then created a YouTube video asking them like, okay, tell me about a deal that happened, or how did TurboPass help you sell a car?
Yes.
So I have a Chevy store in Tyler that did a little video for us, used car, one of the Spanish speaking top salesmen at used to be Charles Mon Toyota here. He jumped on and did like a 20-minute YouTube video on Zoom with me, talking about how it saved a car deal where it was a mother-daughter deal, and they didn't think they were going to put the deal together, but the used car manager said, go ahead and send her a TurboPass and let's look at this report. And so as soon as they pulled the report, they saw this extra income that was coming through. It was child support. And the child support from the daughter actually put the income up over the top of the minimum requirement. And so they saved a car deal where it was a mother-daughter deal with a TurboPass report. Like all these little things. And this is what startups do. We just, you try to get some success stories and then try to tell them as best you can. And so it's kind of another miracle of the time we live, where you don't have to be a multi-million dollar company or a startup that has, that raises $10 million. We didn't do that. We bootstrapped for the first 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And, finally raised a little bit of money in starting last summer, and we finished the round. We didn't even raise as much as we wanted to raise, so we still have that sort of bootstrap mentality, and we were eating beans and rice for so long that it's all the same for us. The fact that
Sure.
that we have some salaries now that our at least our wives are happy about that, and thankfully my brother and I both are married to teachers, so we never lost our medical insurance, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's still the mentality as we try to build this thing.
Sure. I've got a couple of final questions for you here as we start to kind of wind down, Mike. One of them was just kind of, I'm curious how you guys are measuring your success, or let's just say, probably better said, the effectiveness of the service, right? For both the auto dealers or the company itself. Do you have any kind of, I don't know, maybe it's KPIs that you guys use to track these things, or what kind of benchmarks or what kind of feedback are you guys going off of to kind of measure the effectiveness or the success of what you guys are doing with TurboPass?
Sure. I mean, for a SaaS or a software business, we for us, being a subscription based business, of course, is the growth rate of the subscribers, the usage of reports, right? The number of reports that have to continually be growing. We have been lucky enough to partner with Westlake on a couple of projects that allowed us to grow these little sort of plateaus where we bumped up, and then we integrated with their software system, and then had another bump. But and then attrition, of course, right? It's how long do those businesses and clients last? And thankfully, most of the time, if we get people that are calling to cancel, of course, the one thing we can't help is if they're going out of business, right? So the industry through COVID has seen quite a bit of turmoil, the auto retail business, with inventory
Definitely.
and retail. So a lot of dealers have gone out of business, but then every year a bunch of dealers come back into business. And so in order to do business effectively with a lender like Westlake, dealers need tools like TurboPass. So we've seen another increase recently because of some new incentives, let's call it, that Westlake has put out there on self-employed deals. They got to have our information. It just, a dealer is much more likely to sell a car if they use our technology with a certain part of the population, particularly self-employed folks, small business owners. So we don't get too bogged down in KPIs, but there are some important ones regarding, you know, our rate of growth. Revenue is still the biggest driver. We with COVID and raising capital and stuff, I think we had 430% growth in 2021. We came down to about 60% growth in 2022, and because we're going to have a very, very strong second half of this year, I think we're going to be back to around maybe 200% growth, which is what people expect out of startups and software companies. We've got a lot of room to grow in the franchise dealer space. So we have new partners that have 10,000 new car dealers. We currently we have very good coverage in the independent mom and pop car dealers in that market, but we still got room to grow there. But I think there's probably 15,000 new car dealers that we want to go out and sign up the rest of this year and into next year. So we got still plenty of room to go. We really
Yeah.
love some of the early. We're looking at other vertical markets like consumer lending, but also medical, the apartment or property management space. So we're sort of delving into who the big players are, software companies that we can integrate with, things like that. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
Great info.
thankfully, because the revenue is now significant enough, we can spend a little bit of time investigating and pushing hard into some other markets.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And you kind of sort of answered my final question, but maybe you can expand just a little further. The last thing I wanted to know was really what the future is going to look like for TurboPass. Are there any innovations that you guys are working on right now? Any new product features or expansions that are on the horizon that you might be ready
Yes,
to talk about?
yes, I mean, we're very excited about offering dealers an easier way now that they have some of this very important information at their fingertips when a car buyer is ready to buy, because we've created this trust now with their financial information. The consumer can easily go back into our app with the dealer's, permit. When the dealer asks for the customer, hey, do you want to go ahead and just process your down payment? We're working on a payment solution that would allow the customer to go ahead and provide the down payment, say $2,000, $3,000, because we now have some of the important information to do a bank transfer. And so an ACH, as you know, is much cheaper than, let's say, run my Visa card or run my American Express for a down payment,
Yeah,
right?
big time.
So dealers pay exorbitant fees just for convenience for a car buyer, and now they could theoretically save tens of thousands of dollars in transaction costs if we do this next product the right way. So we're working with some good processor partners, and we already, some of our important data that we already have in hand can easily transition to a payment solution, and so we're really working on that as our main, to try to finish out this year from a product standpoint.
Sure. That's great. Mike, lots and lots of cool information. I love everything that you guys are doing. These are exciting times that we are living in here for TurboPass. I know you guys have put in some unbelievable work, to get where you are today. Lots of man hours, lots of traveling, lots of sleepless nights, even probably, and
Probably. Yep, for
most
sure.
certainly lots of sacrifices, to varying different degrees. And so it hasn't been an easy road traveled, but usually things that are worthwhile are that way. So,
Totally true.
but I think you've also been given some big blessings as well, and you've been blessed to have some phenomenal people that are that have crossed your path. It's starting from your co-working space there, and just kind of continuing on. And I for one know you have some really talented individuals on your team. Everybody's putting in some really really good work. And so if there's anything that maybe you want to leave us with here on this second episode here, we're just about wrapped up. Any final parting words on anything that we've covered so far today?
Well, no, I mean, if you're a if you're a maybe perhaps an older professional that is looking to possibly take a leap to move into something that's more entrepreneurial, I would always encourage people to do that. I think there's actually new data shows that more mature founders and entrepreneurs that are a bit older tend to have maybe a little bit higher rate of success than if you're
Yeah.
just very young and brash at 20, 25, thinking you know everything. But yeah, there's probably never been a better time to go out and try to solve problems, maybe with technology, even if you're not exactly sure how to make the widgets. You can, if you can articulate the problem well enough and provide a really good solution, then I think you'll get attention and just go for it. Try to have a little bit of capital or savings when you do it, but or leverage yourself to the hilt if you really believe in it. And so,
That's right.
yeah, that's how
I
I'd
agree.
encourage anybody to go for it if they feel they have a good solution for the market.
Yeah, really, really good, wise words there, Mike, and I couldn't agree more with you. So thank you for everything that you shared today, and again, I'm really impressed with everything you guys have done thus far, and I think your future is very bright. So keep on at it, my friend.
Thank you, Marco. Really enjoyed being on the show and looking forward to catching up soon. Maybe
Yeah,
again in Lockhart for some more barbecue.
you just say when, my friend,
Anytime.
and I'm there. All right, guys. Well,
All right,
that
brother.
does it for another episode of Business Innovators Radio with Mike Jarman, co-founder and CEO of TurboPass, our special guest for today. Thanks again, Mike. Really appreciate you, buddy.
Thanks, Marco. Appreciate it.
Signing off. See you guys
Take
next
care.
time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Podcast with Marco Salinas. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry innovators and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.